he wanted to seek God's face, that he was a man that God loved. When we look at Numbers here, Numbers chapter 6:22, it says, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you.'" We've sung this a lot of times. You guys probably know this. "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace." Just think about that. There's a couple different, he mentions it twice. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. So the Lord's face is something we want to behold. The Lord's face is something that we want turned towards us. We want that to be turned towards us. Then we see also in Exodus later on this is again Moses. Moses said, this is when he's up on the mountain about to receive the 10 Commandments. He says, "Moses said, 'Now show me your glory.' And the Lord said, 'I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But,' he said, 'you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live.' Then the Lord said, 'There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.'" So Moses wanted to see God's glory here. That he wants to see God's face. He wants to see God's face shine upon him, as the Lord described. It's a desire that Moses had, and it's a desire that we should have as well. Can you guys think of anywhere else in the Bible of a character who wanted to see God's face? Just mentioned over and over again about seeing God's face. It would be David. David was known as the man after God's own heart. And over and again in the Psalms, he mentions seeing God's face and wanting to seek God's face. He says, "Give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name, make known among the nations what he has done. Sing to him, sing praises to him, tell of his wonderful acts. Glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Look to the Lord and his strength. Seek his face always." Always. What always means all the time. Always. Seek his face always. Look to the Lord for his strength. It's this recurring theme of seeking, of looking to the Lord. He mentions it one more time. I'm going to pull up just one more verse, but there's tons of them there in Psalms. And we're going through Psalms right now in our yearly Bible reading plan. But this one should be coming up in a few days. It says, "My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, will I seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior." So, like David, if David is a man after God's own heart, we want to be seeking God's face just like he was. If Moses was a man of God, we want to be seeking God's face just like Moses was. But why should we seek his face? What are we looking for? What's kind of the point? What's the point of seeking God's face? So the first point that we have on here is that when we seek God's face, we see what God looks at. And that's important. It's important for us to look at what God looks at, because what somebody looks at kind of tells you what's important to them, where their priorities are. If Sarah's trying to talk to me and get my attention and I'm just looking at the phone and I'm not paying attention to her, that's where my priority is, where I'm looking, what I'm focused on, when I need to be focused on her and what she's saying. But when you look at somebody's eyes and you see what they look at, you see what is important to them. So what's important to God? That's why we need to seek his face, so we figure out what is important to him and what he sees, what he looks at. So when we look at Psalm 34, verse 15, it says, "The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry." So already we see that the eyes of the Lord are on good things. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. And also in here it says they're attentive to their cry. That he's listening, he's looking for who's in trouble. When we follow and when we look at God's face and we see his eyes and we look at his, face and see what he pays attention to, he pays attention to the righteous. He pays attention to those who are in trouble. He hears their cry. So what God is looking at, what we look at God's face, we want to also be focused, and we also want to be looking at what he is looking at. When people are in trouble, when people are crying, that we hear that cry, that we see their need. It's important, because it's what's God looking at, what God is looking at. If I'm looking at it, it's important to me. If God's looking at it, it's important to him, and it should be important to us as well. When we look also, this story comes from when Samuel was picking the new king of Israel. And Samuel walks in and he sees, these sons of Jesse, and he says, wow, that one's big, he's strong, he would be a good king. God says no. He looks at the next one. That one looks smart, he's strong, he's big, that one would be a good king. That must be the guy that God has in mind. And God says no. In 1 Samuel it says, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. There's so much in this verse that God's not looking at the outside. God's not looking at, the things that matter to us. Oh, that person looks strong. Oh, that person looks big. Oh, that person looks important. That person looks rich. That person looks powerful. No. God looks deeper than that. He looks at the heart. He looks at the heart. He doesn't look, it even says here, the Lord does not look at the people or the things that people look at. He doesn't look at the things that we look at. His focus is inward. And that's where our focus should be. If we're looking at God's face, we see the things that he looks at. And he looks at the heart. He looks at what's important. He looks deeper than just the surface. That's how we should look as well. When I first, some of you may know this, some of you may not, but, I met Sarah on Facebook. And that's, kind of, unconventional, I don't know. But, I got to know about her. I talked to her a little bit. I kind of, saw the rest of her family on Facebook and different videos and stuff. And so I got to know about her. But I wanted to see her. I wanted to get to know her. And that was something that I couldn't do, just by texting or calling even, or, I wanted to see her. I wanted to see her face. I wanted to see what was important to her. And it was important to our relationship because we couldn't just completely have a relationship over the phone or over text because you don't know the person. You don't see their face. You don't see what's important to them. And, I think that it's the same thing in our relationship with God. That, we can read the Bible and we can know about him. We can know, but you need to seek his face. You need to seek that relationship with him, not to just know about God. Because, Satan knows about God, knowing about God isn't what deepens that relationship, but seeking to know God. Just as you would want to know your spouse, seeking to know God. It's important. We got to look at God's face. We got to seek after his face to see what he looks at and what's important to him. The second point I have here is that when we seek God's face, we see what he looks away from. It's just important as what he looks at, is what does God look away from? What does he turn his face from? In Habakkuk 1:13, it says, your eyes, this is talking about God here, your eyes are too pure to look on evil. You cannot tolerate wrongdoing. Why then do you tolerate the treacherous? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves. So God can't look onto this evil. He can't stand the evil. He has to turn his eyes away. You cannot tolerate wrongdoing, or he has to take care of it and have justice there. But he cannot tolerate, he cannot look upon evil. And I kind of want to take that and put it into our own lives here of, what do we tolerate? What do we look at? And this this convicts me, and it may convict you, but there's that show, that movie that you should have walked out of, that channel that you should have changed, because that's not something that you should be looking at. That's not something that you should be watching. That these aren't things that God's eyes would look on, and neither should ours. And it's hard, especially in today's world. You can't even walk through the mall without having to look down or look with lust. It's a struggle, but it says that God's eyes are too pure to look on evil. That's how our eyes should be, that we're not going to look at it. We're going to make that right choice. We're going to switch the channel. We're going to walk out of that movie. We're going to look down in the store, because we can't do that. God wouldn't look on that. We can't look on that either. It's important. Do we turn away from the things that God turns away from, or do we keep looking? When I was a kid and something like immodest would come on TV, or we're all watching as a family, or something would come up, all us kids, me and my siblings, we would turn away and we would look to my dad, because he taught us that we don't seek after those things. We turn away from those things. We even went so far to the extreme that if somebody started kissing on TV, we would turn and we would look at Dad. And we're just like, oh, they're not married. But do we do that in life? Do we when something comes before our eyes, do we turn and do we look to our Heavenly Father? Do we do that? It's so much harder. You're alone. It's not like, my dad, who was physically there and we could turn and look at him. Sometimes it feels like, oh, I'm alone. Nobody's going to see me. This is okay. Just kind of have your own little bubble of, oh, it's okay. Nobody will ever know. But God knows. God's watching. And do we look to him? Do we look to him in those times? We should be looking away, but do we? It's hard. It's a question that convicts me, because I should look away sometimes. But I haven't. But I need to. Because God is always watching. God looks away from those things. God looks away from the evil. His eyes are too pure. That word pure there. God's eyes are too pure. Just think about that. God's eyes being pure. My eyes haven't been pure. Have your eyes been pure? And making our eyes pure, what do we want to look on? Well, we want to look on the things that God looks at. We want to look and seek his face, because God's eyes are pure. So when we're looking, when we're seeking him, our eyes will also be pure, and we'll be pure in what we're seeking after. The third point that I have here is, when we seek God's face, we see that he sees us. And this one, it's powerful, because, and that can go either way, that suddenly maybe you feel guilty that, oh, God's seeing me doing this, but also that God loves you so much that he is looking at you, that he loves you, that he cared about you, that he sent Jesus to die for you, that he knows your name. The Bible talks about how God knows the very hairs that are on your head. It even talks about God knowing someone before they were born. It's just mind-blowing how much God cares about the individual. That minute unimportant little person, Gideon, the youngest person of the least important tribe, God looked at him and said, that's the guy. And he raised him up. That Jeremiah, I think it was Jeremiah, it was either Jeremiah or Isaiah, but I'm pretty sure Jeremiah, that God knew him before he was born. In his mother's womb, I called you. That he looked on that unimportant, unassuming, unborn baby, and he called him. That God, when we look at God's face, have you ever felt like God is so far away, like God just can't see you? Like, I've felt that way, that I'm not worth it, that I'm not worthy to be seen, that I don't deserve God's favor, I don't deserve God's grace. Why would he look at me? He's probably far away. But when we seek his face, when we follow after him, when we're looking for him, we find that he was looking at us all the time. Here in this verse in 2 Chronicles chapter 16, it says, "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him." If you feel like you and God are distant, guess who moved? It wasn't God. God has that love. He has those eyes that search throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. Is your heart fully committed to God? Just think about that. You think that I don't have the strength to do this. I don't have the strength to go through life. I got bills stacking up. God is there to strengthen you. I've got, the in-laws coming. God is there to strengthen you. The kids have been bad. The kids have been, driving me crazy. God is there to strengthen you. My health is failing. We're dealing with loss. God is there to strengthen you. Going away to college. What am I going to do? This is all different. This is terrifying. God is there to strengthen you. God is there to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. If you feel distant, if you feel like God doesn't see you right now, check where your heart is. Check where you're seeking. Are you looking at his face? Because he's looking at you. And he's there. But is your heart committed to him? I want you to think about that. If you're going to take away one thing from today, I want you to take away that my heart needs to be fully committed to him, that God is already looking at you, so you have to commit yourself to him. Going back to the ideology of, I'm looking at my phone while Sarah's talking to me. Probably most spouses have heard this, but why won't you look at me? I'm talking to you. Why won't you look at me? Yeah, you've heard that. Everybody's heard that. Why won't you look at me? Pay attention to me. We want that attention. That the phone shouldn't be more important than the person, and nothing else should be more important than focusing on God. Can you picture that? That if we looked at God's face and he wasn't looking at us, how you would feel. But God is looking at us. Are we looking at him? What distractions do we have in our life that are keeping us from looking at him? What is there in your life? If there's something in your life that's distracting you from God, get rid of it. Even Jesus said, if your eye is causing you to sin, pluck it out. It's better to enter heaven blind than to have both eyes and be cast in hell. Whatever is in your life, don't take that letter. I don't want to come next Sunday and see a whole bunch of eye patches, but what is in your life that's distracting you from God right now? What is it? Cast it out. If it's this movie series that's causing you to stumble, cast it out. If it's this show that's causing you to stumble, cast it out. If this is a person who is causing doubt in your relationship with God, you got to be careful with that. Nothing should separate you from God. Nothing should come between yours and his face, because he's looking at you. If you're looking at me, but I'm holding this book up right here and saying, where are you, God? Where are you? Put it down. Put down whatever is blocking your view from God. When we look at Psalm 34:15, I love these two Psalms, by the way. The eyes of the Lord are on the right. Oh, we already went through that one. But the Psalm 28:8, that's it. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, will I seek. That needs to be our prayer. That needs to be our constant prayer every single day. That when God's face is there, that our hearts will cry out, I will seek your face. That needs to be our prayer. God, I will seek your face. It needs to be our prayer, our constant heart's cry. Not just that we say, God, I will seek your face, but our heart is crying out. And my heart says of you, I will seek your face. Your face, Lord, will I seek. It reminds me back of that verse in 2 Chronicles. It says, for the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. There's that word again, hearts. Is your heart committed to him? Is your heart crying out, your face, Lord, will I seek? Is it crying out? Because God's already seeking you. God's already looking at you. Your heart has to cry out, your face will I seek. The final point today is to keep seeking. That seek, looking for God's face, seeing God's face isn't just a one-time thing that you look at God's face, I found you, that's it. No. Seeking is an action. It's an action, that it's something that we continue to do. We keep seeking, we keep looking into his eyes, because there are things like flying past us 1,000,000 miles an hour, getting our distraction here, getting our attention here. This world is distracting, let me tell you. I want to do something and I walk to the kitchen to go get something, and along the way, I completely forget what it is because I start doing something else. And a lot of you would say, well, you're too young for that. I don't know. It's just how I am. I'll start walking, even in cleaning the kitchen. I was cleaning the kitchen the other day, and I started on the counters, and I started washing those. But then I noticed the dishwasher was kind of dusty. So I started cleaning that. And then when I went to go get the rag, then I was like, oh, I need to clean this sink. And so I started cleaning the sink. And then by the end of the day, I was up on top of the cabinets, and I was cleaning the top of the cabinets. And I'm pretty sure those have never been cleaned before because it was just grease and dirt. And our house is pretty clean, but it was grease and dirt. And I'm like, have these ever been cleaned? But yeah, I get distracted. This world is distracting. Amen. I'm a distracted person. But we got to keep seeking. We have to have that focus that we're going to keep looking into God's eyes, that we're going to keep on going towards that goal. We don't seek it and that's done. No, we continue to seek. I want to look at Matthew chapter 14, and this is such a cool story. This is the story of the disciples on the lake. And Jesus stayed behind to pray, and they're on the lake in the boat, and the wind's getting up, and the waves are getting high, and the disciples are kind of freaking out. And these guys, were fishermen, so I'm pretty sure that if they're freaking out, it was probably pretty bad. The boat goes like this, and I'm like, whoa, we're going to capsize? But these were fishermen. These were guys who were used to the rocking all the time. So I'm pretty sure this was probably pretty bad. But it says here that shortly before dawn, so it's dark too, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. I think I just combined two stories. I don't think this one had the rocking, but ignore that. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come out to you on the water. Peter always being the one to step up and say something either really smart or really stupid, Yeah, so, Lord, if it is you, tell me to come out to you on the water, Peter said. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. Beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed up into the boat, the wind died down. Okay, it was a storm. Good, I'm right. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Picture this. Jesus is there. Peter's looking at his face, and he steps out of the boat onto the water, and he doesn't sink, and he's keeping his eyes on Jesus' face. But here's the thing. It says as soon as he got distracted by the winds and the waves, as soon as he started looking and shifting his gaze off of Jesus' face, he sunk, plop, right into the water. I love how Ron put it the other day. He said, if you're not looking at Jesus' face, then you're all wet, because right down in the water you'll go. It's Jesus' face, God's face. We have to seek after it, and we have to keep seeking. We can't get distracted by the winds of life. We can't get distracted by the waves of life, because all those things are going to shift our gaze from God's face, from Jesus' face, and we're going to sink right into it. Instead of this, our cry, our heart needs to cry, "Your face, Lord, will I seek." I'm not going to be distracted by the winds. I'm not going to be distracted by the waves, because God's face is right there. Seek it. Actively seek it. Seek God in prayer. If you feel distant from God, pray to God about it. Tell him how you're feeling. Seek his face in prayer. We see Moses did that. We see David did that. The Psalms, they're worship, but they're also prayer. That God, your face will I seek. I'm going to do this. God, help me. Don't turn your face away from me, God. Keep seeking God. Gotta keep seeking. I'm going to close out with this. I was listening, and I heard this song the other day, and this just ended up completely summing it up perfectly to me. And he said, "I can't walk on the water. I can't stand in the fire unless I look into your eyes, unless I have you by my side. I can't conquer a giant or shut the mouth of a lion. I know that I am just a man, but I am in your hands, and you can." I can't walk on the water. I can't. I really can't. As a kid, I tried. I ran across the swimming pool was there, and I ran, and yeah, gravity did its thing. I can't stand in the fire, for long anyway. I can't do it. I can't conquer a giant. I can't shut the mouth of a lion. But God can. And he says, keep your eyes on him, because he's the one that has you already in his hand. He's the one that's already looking at you. He can do those things. Keep your eyes on him. Now, we may not be facing lions. We may not be facing fire. We may not be facing water or giants or whatever. But you are facing something in your life. You may be facing loss. You may be facing strife. You may be facing, trouble in your marriage. You may be facing whatever it is. If God can tame the fire, if God can tame the water, if God can tame the lion, the giant, conquer those things, how much more can he conquer the problems in your life? So just keep that in mind this week and in your life, that God's face, I want you to make that your prayer, that your face, Lord, will I seek, as we stand and we're going to sing our final song.